The purpose of this video is to explain the guidelines for the final exam. Now, before getting started, there are a few preliminary points I need to make about this video. The video you are about to watch was originally made for a section of this class that ran in the fall semester of 2021. For that reason, if you are not taking this class in the fall of 2021, then the specific exam dates that I discuss in this video will not match the exam dates for your particular section of the class. Furthermore, the possible essay questions you see on the study guides in this video may be slightly different from the possible essay questions that are on the actual study guides for your class and section. However, the general points about the format of the exams, where to find the study guides for the exams, how to take the exams, and how I will grade your exams all still apply to you and your section of the class. To find the precise exam dates for your section and the exact essay questions that you will need to be prepared for the final exam, please consult the Moodle page for our class, the syllabus, the weekly instruction letters, and/or the final exam study guide that is posted online. In addition, if there's anything in this video you find confusing or need clarification on, then please do not hesitate to contact me via email. In this class, there is one exam, the final exam, which you will take during the last week of the class. There is a study guide for this exam, and you need to know that it is very unlikely that you would be able to perform well on the exam if you do not make use of the study guide. So, in order to succeed on the exam, it is vital that you know where to locate the study guide. There are two places you can go to find the study guide for the final exam. First, you can find it in the Course Information and Resources area of our Moodle page. Second, you can find the final exam study guide in the area of our class that is devoted to the final exam. In this case, that would be week 8 of the course. So, we can find the study guide in the week 8 area of our Moodle course page. Now that we know how to find the study guide, we can begin discussing how the exam will actually work. Let's begin by considering the format of the exam. The final exam will consist of 2 long-form essay questions. These essays will require you to respond to a specific essay prompt and answer everything that is asked in that prompt. You can find the possible essay prompts you could see on the exam listed in the subsequent pages of this document. Furthermore, you will not choose which of these essay prompts that you will answer. The prompts you will be required to answer on the exam will be chosen at random by the program that administers the exam. The possible essays that you see on the study guide are exactly word for word what you would see on the final exam. For example, if the exam program randomly selected essay prompt 1 for you, then what you would be presented with and what you would be required to respond to would be precisely and exactly what you are currently looking at on your screen. As I have already mentioned, the study guide also tells us that you will have a period of 5 days during the final week of this class to take the final exam. If we look at the course schedule, we can see that the exam program will open up on Monday morning at 8 and remain open until midnight on Friday. Now, once that 5-day period has passed, you will no longer be permitted to submit the exam. However, although you must meet that final deadline, it will be up to you when, within that period of 5 days, you decide to take the final exam. In the next section of this video, we will take a closer look at the mechanics of how the exam program works and what is actually involved with taking the exam. As mentioned previously, you will take the exam through a program on Moodle. To find where you will take the exam, we need to go to the Week 8 area of the class. When you are ready to take the exam, then you would simply click on the link that you see here. However, it is very important that I stress what being ready to take the exam actually entails. In addition to knowing about the study guide, there's probably no more important piece of information about the exam than what I'm about to tell you. When you open the exam program, you will only have 20 minutes to submit your answers. Now, if you have a look at the study guide, then you will notice that the essay prompts are actually rather involved. You might be thinking to yourself, it would seem unreasonable for us to be required to write 2 long essays in only 20 minutes. And of course, you would be exactly right about that. However, the reason for the 20-minute time limit is to force you to have to write your essay responses to all the possible essay questions in advance. The idea here is that once you open the exam program, all the real work has already been done. All that will be left to do is to upload your responses that you have already prepared and written. So, just to be very clear, in this case there are 6 possible essay questions on the exam study guide. That means that before you click the link to begin the exam, you should have 6 separate documents in either .doc or PDF format already prepared. And each of those documents should have a response to one of the possible essay questions. Then, once you see the questions that the program has selected for you, all that remains for you to do is upload your answers. The whole process should not really take any longer than a few minutes. I have emphasized this at length because it really is crucial to your success on the exam. The likelihood of you scoring well on the exam if you do not have your essays completed and ready to submit in advance is exceedingly low. And because the exam is worth 25% of your overall grade, this is a mistake you will want to make sure you do not make. In order to give you a better sense of how the exam program functions, I am now going to give you a demonstration of the process. Once you are ready to begin the exam, which again means that you already have your responses to all the possible essay questions completed, then simply click on the link for the final exam. Then click on Attempt Quiz Now, and following this, confirm that you want to begin the exam. In this instance, the first essay the program has presented me with is the question dealing with Socrates on philosophy, the examined life, and the fear of death. So, at this point, I simply need to upload my response to this particular question. To upload my essay in response, I would simply scroll down to where the program allows me to attach files. Then I would go to the next page and do the same thing for the second question. At this point, if you wish, you can click on the documents you have submitted to check that you have attached the correct file. This is something I would recommend doing since if you do accidentally submit the incorrect file response, then this would detract significantly from your grade. Then, once you are satisfied with the files you have submitted, you can click on Finish Attempt. Overall, the process of taking the exam is pretty straightforward. The two things that I will once again stress to you are that you need to make sure you have all your essays written out before beginning the exam, and also that it is a very good idea to go back and check to make sure you attach the correct documents before finalizing your exam submission. So now that we are familiar with the mechanics of how the exam will work, let's take a look at what my grading expectations will be and the sort of approach you should take to the questions. So to do this, the first thing I would say is the basic thing you need to focus on, if nothing else, right? Now, just focusing on this isn't going to necessarily get you a top score in the exam, but the first hurdle you need to clear is to make sure that you answer every single thing the question is asking you. Right, that is the first thing I'll look for. I will have a certain number of points attached to each part of the question, and the first thing I'll look at is, did you address this part of the question or didn't you? And because if you didn't, then I can't give you any credit for that part of the question because of course you didn't answer. So the first thing to make sure you do is every single thing that's asked about in the prompt, make sure you have a response to it. Of course, the best responses will not only answer every part of the question, but will do so accurately, correctly, and show a depth of understanding. But of course, the first thing you need to do is just make sure you answer all parts of the question. To demonstrate this, let's actually look at one of the prompts. So here is the first possible essay prompt for exam 1. It comes from our lesson on Plato's Euthyphro. So let's read through this a little bit and I'll explain to you sort of what I'm looking for. So first, for each question, you'll see a sort of title here. This says Socrates' criticism of Euthyphro's third definition of piety. This right here is not something you need to provide an explicit answer for. It's just the title or topic of the question. It's just what ties everything together. However, what you do need to provide an answer for is everything here. You'll notice that each question is divided into two parts, right? And just to avoid any confusion, you are not supposed to choose which part you answer, right? So you're not supposed to say, well, I'll answer part 1 or I'll answer part 2. You need to answer both. There is no choice in that matter. And in addition, every single part of this question in both parts 1 and 2, I'll have a certain number of points in mind. So for instance, the first part of the question says, what is Euthyphro's third definition of piety? There will be a certain number of points I'll have in mind for you accurately addressing that point. The same with the second question. How is this definition different from his second definition? A certain number of points for that. How does Euthyphro's third definition of piety make the discussion of the dialogue relevant for both monotheism and polytheism? A certain number of points for that, right? So I'll be looking to see that you answer explicitly and separately each of these 3 questions in part 1. Then also notice another thing you'll commonly see in the prompts you can find in part 2 of the question. Here it says, explain how Socrates rejects Euthyphro's third definition of piety by making reference to the passage below where appropriate. Right, so I'm telling you here that what I want you to do is explain what is going on in this passage, and then I go on to further explain that to do that, you need to answer and address each of these 3 points. 1, 2, and 3. So what does that mean? You'll want to make sure you address point 1, what's the difference between essential and accidental properties, point 2, and point 3, explicitly and in detail. And because the question said you should make reference to this passage below, you'll also want to reference this passage in your answer and demonstrate your understanding. So all of this is just to show you that what I put in the prompts is not sort of just a suggestion, right? You might compare it to the response paper prompts. There I had various questions, but those are more just to sort of get your mind going, right? If you don't want to answer all those questions, you didn't have to. It was just sort of to help guide you. But with the exam, it's different. I'm really just trying to test your comprehension of the arguments, and so every single thing that is in the prompt, you need to make sure that you address. One common question that you may have at this point is how long your responses to the essays should be. In the abstract, this can be a difficult question to answer. That is because it can really be highly dependent upon the particular essay in question. The requirement I have is that you give a detailed explanation of each point in the essay prompt, and the amount of words and space it takes to do that can vary depending on the circumstance. However, to give you some more specific guidance on this matter, on Moodle I have posted an example of an exam essay response to give you a better idea of how long your essay should be and what an adequate answer looks like. To find this, go to the Week 8 area of the course page where the exam itself is located. Then scroll down to the document entitled Sample Exam Essay.
So if you click on this, what you're going to find is the essay prompt that comes up here is not something we're covering in this class. It's a prompt I've used in a different class, so the content here is not important. But what you can get from this document is it sort of shows you what I have in mind in terms of length, right? And also another reason to look at this is if you look at this prompt and then you look at my sample answer below, you can see that every single thing that's asked about in the prompt there is addressed in this answer. And so I think it's helpful, again, don't focus on the content, but I think it's helpful to read through this sample response and compare it to the prompt, just so you have in mind what I mean when I say address every single thing that is asked about in the prompt. Also, you can get a sense of length, right? So you can see that my response is single-spaced, and if we scroll down, it goes on to that second page, but it doesn't start at the top of the first page. So we're probably talking about a page or a little over a page single-spaced, which means 2 pages or a little over 2 pages double-spaced. That gives you a sense of the sort of length requirement. Again, there's no explicit length requirement, but when you consider the fact that each of these essay questions is worth 100 points of your total grade, which is a very significant percentage. That means each essay by itself is worth 12.5% of your total grade. You're going to want to make sure that you explain everything in as much detail as you can, right? One thing to keep in mind is that when I'm grading your essay, I don't assume that you know what you're talking about or that you know the material and sort of read my own knowledge of the material onto what you're saying, right? Rather, I'm looking for evidence that you understand the material. And so if things are underexplained or ambiguous such that, I can't really tell if you really understand this or just sort of saying some things you heard in the lectures that maybe are supposed to fit here, if I can't make that determination, then you're not going to get as much credit as you could if you fully explained all the points. I think one way to think about this, which a student in a previous class actually used this expression to explain what he thought I was looking for, is imagine that you were teaching the material to someone else not in this class. So again, just like on the explanation section of your response paper, your intended audience shouldn't be me, someone who already knows the material. Imagine that you're writing a letter to a friend and you're trying to teach them this material for the first time. That's the sort of detail you should have in your answers, and that's the sort of detail that is going to get you a top grade on the exam. To conclude this video, there are just a few more points we need to make. So one point I want to make is about my grading standards on the exams, right? I've already suggested that the first thing I look for is, do you answer everything? And then the second thing, of course, is what's the quality of your answer? How accurate is it? How completely explained is it? And do you show real evidence that you have a deep understanding of the material? And my standards for this, when I'm thinking about sort of my standards or how I'm going to grade that, I do keep in mind that this class is in an online format. Now, what does that mean? Well, imagine that you were taking this exam in a sort of normal face-to-face class format. You would come in, maybe you would have an hour and a half or 2 hours to sit down and write out the responses to the questions I gave you. Now, if you were in that format, I couldn't expect things like well-polished sentences. I would have to expect that you might forget certain things, right? That your answers just wouldn't be as well polished as if you were sitting at home and writing them. But now think about the setting in which you're taking this exam. For each exam, you've had many, many weeks where the possible essay questions were available to you to prepare. Once we get to the exam week, you have an entire week where we won't be covering any material, we'll just be taking the exam. That's just devoted to the exam. So you've had a lot of time to prepare in advance. In addition, you're at home writing these, typing your responses out on the computer, and of course you have available to you at the same time the lectures and the class notes and the readings. So given that, in this format, my expectations for what you produce would be of a higher quality, right? I have higher expectations in this online format than I would in an in-class format where those things aren't available to you. So what this means is that when I read your answers, I'm reading it with the idea that this is someone who had the lectures and the readings and the notes and a lot of time to prepare for this and time to write it out without the time constraints of an hour and a half or 2 hours sort of bearing down upon you. So you want to keep that in mind. Again, take this assignment seriously and don't leave it in doubt on my end whether you really understand the material in a deep way. Just like on the response papers, really try to show your understanding by putting the points in your own words, by using your own examples, by finding ways to explain the points that show you are thinking critically about those points. The second point I want to make has to do with plagiarism and use of external sources. So as I just said, you're welcome and in fact encouraged. You should, in preparing for the exam, rely on the lectures, rely on the class notes, you should rely on the readings. You should use all those things. However, it is expected that you're not going to be using external sources on this assignment, and also that the work that you do is going to be your own work. Right, so if there's any evidence that part of your answer was taken directly from a website, taken directly from some external source, or if your answer matches that of one of your classmates, all of that will be treated as plagiarism and you will receive a 0 for the assignment. And given that the exam is 25% of your overall grade, that is certainly not something you want to do. And again, just like the response papers, it is something I check for and look out for. So again, just focus on using the lectures and the readings and your notes and your understanding, and make sure the work that you present in the exam is detailed, accurate, coherent, and is your own work. Now, all that being said, I don't want the exam to sound overly intimidating or too scary, and I want to tell you that I am here to help, right? If you want to reach out to me in your preparation in the weeks leading up to the exam, and get my thoughts on some of your responses, I am available, provided you give me enough time to comment back to you. I am available to give you comments. So I want to make myself available to help you. Although I do want to hold a high standard on the exam, I also want to enable you and give you the ability to meet that high standard. Now, as always, if anything I've said in this video doesn't make sense, if you have further questions, please do reach out to me, but I will cut the video there. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.